Hey, everybody, welcome. It's good to see so many of you here. Hello, Jess, Antonio, Bedlington Groomer, Lori. Good afternoon, I think, to you, Lori. Rhodesy, also to you, I think. Good afternoon. Howra, good to see you again. Thanks for joining another stream. The word be true. Welcome. I think this is the first time I've seen you in the chat, so welcome, especially if it's your first time here. Whitney, great to see you. And woot woot. Welcome. Vienna, great to see you as well. Awesome. JGL, hello. Thanks for dropping in that you're tuning in from Hudson, New York. Thanks, Vienna. Sandy, hello, Sandy. And Musical Essence, great to see you. Alexis, welcome back. ETO, welcome back. Oh, good to see you. So many friends. Oh, the word be true. Trisha, I'll try to remember that. I'll try. Well, today we have a jam-packed stream with 3 submissions. So a lot of times we do these sessions and they're open for questions. I am not sure that we're going to have any time for free-for-all questions today, but as always, as we go through pieces for the 3 people that submitted videos, you are welcome to ask any questions you have about anything that we're talking about. And for sure, if we do finish, we usually do these for about 2 hours. So if we do finish before 2 hours going through those 3, then I'll open it up for any questions about anything in particular. But we have a extremely varied set of music we're going to hear today. Hello, Michael. You say you're new to the platform. Where do you find mid-beginner material? Michael, a lot of stuff that I talk about here, I actually teach to my beginner students when I teach in person. Of course, it'll be applied to less complex pieces than I might use in videos on the channel. But there aren't a lot of topics on the channel that I think don't pertain to beginners. So I think you could look at lots and lots of things, from technique to interpretation and musicality and artistry. A lot of things that we talk about. And look for ways to apply that to what you're working on. So, and if it's, 30 seconds of one video, then great. Alexis, you say use ABRSM pieces as a guideline to start for mid-beginner material. Yeah, those are always a great place to look for repertoire that you want to play. But yeah, Michael, as a direct answer about your question, I'd say a lot of the stuff here, I think does apply to beginner. It's just going to take a little extra searching for you to say, oh, here's how that concept can actually work in the piece I'm playing. I do try to focus on intermediate and advanced repertoire on the channel usually. Okay, we're going to dive in to Antonio playing a little bit of jazz. Antonio, thanks for sending this. You're playing a Bill Evans piece. Emily. And Antonio, can you just drop in the chat while I get this set up for us to take a listen? Did you learn this by ear? Did you learn it from a lead sheet? Yeah, let us know that. And we'll start the conversation there and we'll take a listen. Okay, here is Antonio playing Bill Evans' Emily. Woo! Antonio. Big round of applause for Antonio. Lovely work. Oh, yeah. Yeah, ETO says bravo. I agree. Lori says beautiful playing. Vienna Lu, wow, so good. I'm going to chime in, Alexis, with what you were talking about for Michael when we finish Antonio's segment, but I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. Yeah, lots of applause from Rhodesy and Bedlington Groomer and Trisha. Right? And Frederick. Hello, Frederick. And Rhodesy, I was also expecting a low note at the end, but it didn't happen. But great work, Antonio. Let's just start with Antonio. You've been submitting here for what, like 2 years? I have to say, I think this is the most, the deepest and most musical recording that you have sent to us so far. So you're doing great. Yeah. I would just let that sink in for a minute because I heard the tune, the chord changes were chosen very nicely. There was it's jazz and it's very free, but I still knew kind of where the pulse was. There was really a lot of good stuff. So congratulations, Antonio. Okay. So this is all about getting better. So I'm not going to, Antonio, I hope you don't think I'm going to go too hard at you today, but I don't think I am. Let's talk about, maybe 3 things or so. I pulled up a little bit of sheet music for this so that I don't have to play it by ear, but I know it's not exactly the notes you played. So first of all, I would love, Antonio, to see if you can work on feeling as you move around the keyboard, like your movements are more connected. Michael, you say I look a little teary-eyed. I'm very proud of Antonio. So Antonio, yeah, can you see if we can make some of the movements, usually when you're playing a melodic line, they're okay and you're playing with more finger legato and things are more connected. So maybe like a line like this. So here, okay, that might be where you have more going on. But sometimes, especially when the right hand is trying to transitioning back and forth in rolls from melodic to giving a little support to the harmony, so like, and then we go back to melody. In between those moments, can we feel like we're still, it looks a little bit like you're disconnected from the music, and it doesn't sound like you are. But I think you'll connect even more if the gesture is also connected. So approaching that, transition from where the right hand's taking accompaniment back to melody, instead of just moving the hand to and playing, which I know on a recording we're fighting a lot of different things. Maybe on a recording we're feeling a little nervous. Maybe we're trying to just play the tune and get it right. But if you've got that freedom of thought, right? Transition, and the right hand, it's already singing the melody. Think of it that way. It's already singing the melody when you leave and you start the movement toward the next note before you even play it. Yeah. And you can apply that everywhere. I mean, even if there are melodic lines where we have 3 notes, like da da da, even the main theme. don't just leave us there and stop, but let your hand continue to sing. Makes sense, Antonio? FaZe, you missed a great performance. I don't want you to scroll back now, but if you do have a chance at the end of the stream, go back and listen to what Antonio played. Michael, you say Bill Evans had a unique, diminutive style. I love Bill Evans, and I love his chord voicings and his maybe my favorite jazz pianist. Trisha, you say that calm assurance is the right mix, sure of your piece. Yeah. Although I'll say, even if I'm sight reading something, which you're going to see plenty of today, well, I'm doing it right now, but also in the next two pieces, I'll be sight reading as we talk about them. But even when I'm sight reading, I still feel more, even when I'm not confident, because I'm purely reading it, you're still going to see more connection of gesture to tie it back to what we're talking about. So even if I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go, things stay in motion, right? And Antonio, you say, yeah, it makes perfect sense. The recording session is always a little more tense. That's absolutely true. And Antonio, if this looks to you, especially as I demonstrate it and as you experiment with it, if this looks like too much of a classical movement, because a lot of jazz players stay more connected to the key. Even if you stay fully connected with the note and finger at the bottom of the key, we can still have more movement in the wrist and the arm to help connect. So even if it's smaller, I'd still recommend exaggerating it more. It's always easier to feel that and exaggerate it while we learn to, change what the body's doing. And then say, okay, I don't like doing, I don't want to look like long, especially while I play Bill Evans. Fine. But once you've experienced that freedom where we're not just moving from place to place, then start to say, okay, I still want to provide that movement and that gesture and sing with the gesture as well as the music, and I can just do it in a smaller way now. So Antonio, you say, in the last big chords with the left hand, you use the thumb to press two keys together. Is that okay? Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. FaZe, you say, can't do tense without it, and you ask the same question. Oh, Oculus, great question. I don't know if we're going to get to an answer to that today because we have so much to cover. But if you stick around, we might end up talking about that in one of the next couple pieces that we go over today. But there's a huge reason to move in and out of the keyboard. There are lots of reasons. They're very context dependent. Yeah, Trisha, fear of making a mistake, mental block. Yeah, that fear. Trisha, if you haven't seen my latest video on stage fright and anxiety, go check that out, because the whole purpose of that video is to talk about addressing fear in performance. So if any of you haven't seen that, go check it out, because they're two of my favorite ways for freeing us up. And just letting the music be what we practiced and being excited to play it for other people in whatever form that takes for us. And Leslie, welcome. Okay, Antonio, so that was the first thing, just feeling more free with the gesture. And here's a question tying into that for everybody. there is another underlying reason why continual movement is really important at the piano. Who can chime in with the answer to that question? Why is continual movement important? I am looking forward to hearing what people say about that. Lori says, avoiding or limiting tension. Let's see what other comments come in. Bedlington Groomer, so we don't tense up. It sounds like we've talked about this with a couple of you before. Mark, because a piano can only decrescendo. That is true, but not exactly tied to this. Michael, so the rhythm is not lost. Great. Woot, woot. It's Nancy, right? Relaxation to limit injury. Yes. Vienna, maintaining a consistent sound. ETO, feeling rhythm and groove. Great comments here, and I love that we're all thinking about it. Antonio says, because if you stop playing, the audience leaves. Well, hopefully they're just waiting for you to play the next tune, and they're not going to leave after you just finish one. Or in the middle of one. Alexa says, so that the muscles don't get tense, kind of like how in a race, when you stop running, you find it harder to continue running again. Yes. Oh, lots of great stuff here. Whitney for the melodic line. J2000 rocks. You should be reading ahead. Yes. And Nancy, thank you for that. And the answer is, so in addition to what we just talked about, which is that connection to phrase. So some of you said that again, right? We had like Vienna maintaining a consistent sound. That's part of it. And that is tied to, for the melodic line that Whitney said. Okay, so that's kind of what the direction that we looked at first with this. And we said, in order to stay emotionally connected to the line, stay moving, right? Secondly, is it, X? Pian? I'm sorry. Coordinating the entire body, not just the fingers. That's part of it too. Okay. And the biggest answer I was going for is exactly what Alexis said, and really what Lori said first. So what Bedlington Groomer said, to quote Alexis, because you gave the longest reflection on this, to not have the muscles tense up. Kind of like how in a race, when you stop running, it's hard to continue, right? The most difficult thing to do in any activity that requires movement. Any activity that requires movement. So Alexis, your thought about running is extremely tied to what we do at the piano because the body is in motion. Anytime we are in motion, it's easier to stay in motion or it's easier to continue on if we don't stop. Who was that? Newton? Who said that a body in motion stays in motion? Of course, not meaning a human body, but just something. I think that was Newton. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's difficult to start movement from a standstill, right? And there are opportunities. I shouldn't call them opportunities. There are places everywhere in repertoire that are like tricks where we might want to stop. Ends of phrases we might want to stop. This melody that's only 3 notes long, we might want to stop. Because maybe the melody feels like it kind of pauses there and breathes, right? But if we stop the body, everything we do at the piano is about kinetic energy and harnessing that and transferring that energy. So if that energy stays in movement, we can activate in any direction that we want to go. Fast, slow, quiet, loud, any type of expression that you want to add to that. We can activate in any of those directions far more easier if we're already in movement. So lots of great answers from everybody. And a lot of you hit the nail on the head, at least on one side or the other. Perfect. Newton's first law of motion. Great. And Trish, you said you find when you know a composition, for example, with Eric Satie, you're free to move with it. Yes, yes. So we want to learn how to continue to be free and program that freedom of movement right when we start learning the piece. Because when we change, and so Antonio, bring this back to you, when we change and we're playing kind of from a more static place and we start to add movement, it changes muscle memory. So for all of you that are learning classical music and things that are really technical, for example, if you can program in the movements that you would like right from the beginning, even perhaps your first sight reader close to it, that's hard to do. It's really hard to do. But the closer we get to the beginning of learning and keeping those movements there, the less we have to unlearn later on. Because even if we're playing the same notes and even if the sound is similar, we're using the same fingers, we haven't changed fingering, just the fact that the arm is in motion and the wrist is pivoting, all that changes how it all feels to play. And it literally changes the neural connection that the brain has made to what you've learned in the first place. So the earlier you can, Antonio, you can experiment with this anytime. But, especially for the next thing that you start working on, see if you can start connecting those lines with gesture immediately. Because you'll find it a lot easier in the next piece than trying to go back and add that into this. But still go and try. Great stuff. So, okay. I think that was that was the end of my first point. Okay, Antonio, I'll give you a congratulations on this. There was only one spot in your performance where the pedaling got a little muddy. That's awesome, because I know that we've struggled with pedaling before, and just to make that kind of progress, and we got through the whole performance, 2+ minutes, and there was only that one little bit. It happened kind of at a climactic moment, so maybe you tensed up a little bit in the process of playing that crescendo and trying to express, and in the meantime, maybe the foot just got planted and stuck. But otherwise, great job keeping the pedaling really, really clean throughout the whole rest of the piece and the performance. Okay. Next point, maybe just a short one. Antonio, could you experiment with a little more freedom of tempo faster? I like that things weren't feeling stilted, and I don't want you to think tempo, I mean like putting it in a box or playing it to a metronome or something like that. But are we able to get through, especially some of the areas maybe where, for now, because we're practicing, where there isn't as much movement of the hands around, and we can navigate those a little more easily? Can we increase the tempo a little bit? Wrong chord. Oops, sorry. And then, when we have those moments, kind of like the one that I just got to, that's a real end. Maybe that's the end of the head here. Right? Then we can make a really nice change and take a lot more time. And those moments where we take more time, they're even more effective. And of course, part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because Bill Evans almost always plays this faster. In general, it feels a bit faster. So if we can, that'll also help you feel that connection to that phrase that we're talking about. Antonio, thanks for saying that composer. I even have it on the score I downloaded of this. It says Johnny Mandel and Johnny Mercer. So Bill Evans, this is just a Bill Evans transcription, right? Great. Jay Cosdy. We will see if I can answer that question. But I've got three pieces I'm going through today. But I'll see if we can come back at the end of the stream. Yeah. Antonio, does that sound good about taking a faster tempo through here? Oh yeah, Lori, I'll show some of the sheet music. So this isn't exactly what Antonio played, but it's close. And it's just something I found really, really quickly online. So you can even see it's the Bill Evans version, but it says arranged by this guy. I don't know who, I'm assuming maybe Kevin Hewitt. I don't know who Kevin Hewitt is, but it's darn close. So, cool. Yeah, okay. Great. Third thing, Antonio. And I think that'll be it for today. Feel like you can be a little more expressive with the left hand as things move around. There are a couple times that you added in some nice little runs. And see if you can feel them maybe in two distinctly different ways. I'm just going to use one, and it's not exactly what you played, but it's one that's very similar to what you played. And it's right at the beginning of the piece. So this thing in the left hand. Okay, there are two huge ways we can kind of interpret that. And if we exaggerate that, I think that'll be great for expanding your musical vocabulary. So one, the most simple, straightforward one, and the one that's maybe the most classical approach, because we're ascending, taking that line all the way to the uppermost note, and crescendoing it, or just feeling that it goes all the way there. That's the simplest one. Just make sure it's connected like that. Maybe even feel free to experiment with the speed like we just talked about. The other way is saying, oh, the harmony that's coming up is really cool and really interesting. Because maybe... well, yeah, it is supposed to be B flat. I can't think of... The piece is so in my head that... Yeah, so that would be a more predictable chord. Let's listen to the difference here. Okay, so that's not what's in the piece. But let's pretend like this chord that we're going to, which is B flat 13, is really unexpected, and we want to highlight how unexpected that is. What if we make a nice crescendo, etc., and show our line going forward in the left hand, and then reverse direction, almost immediately upon the changing of that chord. It's similar to the classical principle of like a subito piano somewhere in a work, or somewhere in the middle of a phrase. We might predict it by an eighth note here, and it shows a really big color change. So I would encourage you, Antonio, as you experiment with phrases like that in the left hand especially, how do you feel about phrasing some with that growing, crescendoing movement, or just really following the voice leading or that line, and others where instead of following the line, you're predicting somewhat with a huge change in color and a change in dynamic, this massive, interesting, really cool new harmony that you're going to play. I think that sums up my comments for you, Antonio. You say you didn't like Bill Evans playing this piece so fast, and you heard a Not Fort playing Danny Boy slower, and is that kind of performance inspired you? Great. Okay. I'll get behind that. So let me rephrase about my suggestion about tempo then. Instead of maybe taking a faster tempo, try to hear the different statements of that motif like they're more connected instead of less connected. Yeah? And then maybe you're not going to feel like you need to go a lot faster to do that, but the underlying intention is going to be there to hear more connection across the bars. Yeah. Oh, great. Rhodesy, I've not heard of Albert Amans. No. Antonio, if you have any other questions, let me know if there is anything you want to follow up. But otherwise, can we all give Antonio another round of applause? That was really, really nice playing. We just pulled apart a couple little details, but gosh, Antonio, really good. Love it. Oh, yeah, Vienna says it was actually amazing and so beautiful. I agree. Yeah, Antonio said maintaining tension and flow when you make pauses for expressions is hard. Yeah, it is hard. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of another analogy for you. Very rarely when we're having a conversation do we hold our breath, right? Even if we're taking a pause in making a statement or we're placing emphasis in a statement somewhere, or we're just breathing. Very often, we're not just going and holding our breath until the next thing comes out. That's not very natural. So maybe think about that as you're exploring the movement tied to, those pauses. Pauses are more like breath or exhale, one or the other, rather than holding the breath and not just being completely still. Yep. Oh, good. Good stuff. Rhodesy, you are up next. Rhodesy is playing... There you are, okay. Chopin's Opus 70, number 1. Yay! Vienna says yay. So excited for Chopin. Okay. And Rhodesy, you filmed this in an interesting way. It's kind of first person. My pleasure, Antonio. My pleasure. So, Rhodesy, I've got your Chopin queued up, and we're going to take a listen and talk through that next. All right, let's give Rhodesy a nice round of applause. Good job. Good job. All right. Vienna says, wow, Trish, love it. Awesome. Love the dynamics, wonderful expression. Rock on from Phase. Great. Great stuff. Okay, Rhodesy. First off, I want to especially highlight that your wrist movement in the B section here. Nice job with that, because you're letting the wrist be nice and free there, which is really helping the expression of those. You're not trying to push through. So great job. I could see that hinging and the pivoting. And I'm also 100% for using the same fingers that you did in that section. You used the same fingers twice in a row. I, for example, have the Paderewski score here, which recommends changing some of the fingers. 5-3, 4-1, 4-2, 3-1, 4-2, 3-1, 5-2. That just doesn't feel very natural to me. So I'm 100% behind the finger choice that you had there as well, to just use the same two fingers twice in a row and do that quick bounce from the wrist. Works great. Good. And I also think we're going to come back and talk a little bit about the character of the piece, but I think it's definitely in the right direction. Yeah. It feels, especially when you got to revisit the opening theme at the end, it feels nice and joyful. And then the cantabile middle section is still nice. It still has the waltz lilt, but a little bit more vocally inflected, let's say. So that was good. Yeah, Rhodesy, I agree. No need to make something unnecessarily difficult when it doesn't need to be. Okay, let's talk about a couple things that we can work on. So taking the theme from the top. There's a lot of leaping around. Yeah? But one of the things that really sticks out to me, Rhodesy, is that when you're going through these passages in the main theme here, that as soon as we start the first arpeggio up, I see your hand doing kind of splaying out like this, and it stays there, especially 4 and 5 sticking out, and it stays there. That's a really hard shape to maintain and play with fluidity. And one of the things that needs improvement in this first statement is that sense of flow, right? Through all of the ornamentation and up the ascent and then coming back down, it needs to sound like it's one figure. And right now there are some pauses in between. And it's going to be easiest to work through those if we can let the hand relax a little bit more. So let's go back and show you that again. So we need to practice slowly so that when we cross, the hand's still relaxed. And then we jump. So, right? Okay. Yes. So, yeah, Rhodesy, you said the piece is going to challenge your leaping technique. So part of being able to play leaps consistently and get out of those leaps and then go back and play a fluid line post is making sure we're not stuck, right? Think of this, we just talked about in the previous section, right, about keeping the playing mechanism in motion. And we were talking about it further up. We were talking about making gestures with the arm and with the wrist. But think about it this way, Rhodesy. If your hand is open, this is also a form of getting stuck. And so if we're trying to predict too much, we'll go back and show it from overhead, that we have all these places to go. We're playing flat, more flat, spread. That's also getting stuck, right? And it's the fingers that are getting stuck. Maybe your arm is moving, but now this mechanism needs to be able to expand and contract and relax. So. So my biggest tip for this opening section, Rhodesy, is go back and play it at a tempo that you can do two things. One, be totally aware that for every single note that you're playing to, you're not stretching to get there. Or you're definitely not stretching to get there until you've played the note prior. So even this leap of a tenth, we want to practice no stretch at all. If I show you from overhead. So the hand just moves. There's a little rotation maybe. Almost no stretch. Yeah? Okay, so if that's not even the hardest leap section, we got to get that one before we're going to have a chance at tackling any of them that are even more difficult. Okay, that was part one, is make sure that, right, where every note that you play, you are aware of the position of your hand. And you're not going to play the next note of the run or of the passage until you are sure that the hand is relaxed. Rhodesy, how slow do you think that's going to need to be? And Trisha says, you love to play a Chopin nocturne. Very lovely, very lovely. Anybody else? I'll open that question up too. Rhodesy, yeah, so Rhodesy, the question was, and anybody can chime in, how slowly do you think we need to go in order to be fully aware of the moments between notes? Vienna, that's close to the right answer. Yeah. Extremely slowly, until we have built such awareness that we know that we know that the hand is behaving the right way. And even then, and I bet all great pianists would do this with a piece like this and with the runs that are in here. Even if you've learned the piece really well and you've played it a lot and you have perfect technique, you will still come back and go through this extremely slowly, being aware of every single movement. Yeah? Fred says slow and then go slower. And probably, if you think that's too slow, go even slower. Let me give you a demonstration. So, for me to have all of the thoughts I need to have about the space between the notes and what my hand is doing, I need to take this tempo. That's about as fast as I can go and think about every muscle and every tendon and how my hand is reacting to every finger change and every cross, every thumb tuck, every time fourth finger, for example, needs to play this A flat and fifth finger gets involved because my tendons are extremely tied together, 4 and 5. Yeah? That's the maximum speed that I can go. And I'm a professional. And when I'd revisit the piece, so if I'm learning it right now, that's the tempo I would take for quite a bit of learning. Because I want to be sure that I program in right away, just like we talked about earlier today. I want to program the right muscle movement because the more I practice this flat and spread, right? The more I practice that, the harder it's going to be to let any of that relax. And the more, as we're seeing when we start to approach faster tempo, it's going to cause problems. And it's going to cause like hiccups in the phrase. And we want to get rid of them. And your ears can probably hear those, Rhodesy, and you want to smooth that out. And, oh, thanks, Vienna. So we want to smooth all those out, right? So, yeah, Rhodesy, I was wondering if you were going to say that. I'm not going to go off on a tangent in this stream, but I've had the idea to do this video for months and months, and I haven't done it, and Dennis just put out one kind of about this, and I'm like, I missed the opportunity to be the first one. But I really don't think there is any such thing as hardest and easiest. I may have even said that on a stream to you, Rhodesy, before. So you said this is Chopin's hardest posthumous waltz? Is it? I would say playing the, quote, easy A minor waltz and playing it well is harder than playing this. If we're going to use levels. Because hardness is not all about technique. Technique is only half of what makes music possible. So we're talking about technique a lot because in this piece, we got to have it to a certain degree and we have to do things in order to be able to express the phrase we want to. Yeah. So, yeah, Rhodesy, I would encourage you, but also everybody here, gosh, there's a reason why Moonlight Sonata First Movement is listed in the RCM syllabus as level 10. There's a reason why Chopin's Fourth Prelude is listed, I think, as RCM level 7. They're really, really difficult pieces to play well. Yeah. So, okay, Rhodesy, let's go back. Work on that space between the notes. And letting the arm move us to where the fingers need to go. So the arm and the wrist, they're just being free and moving us. And we're not doing any stretch. And the tempo you need to take to accommodate that, take it. It'll also be a great test in the meantime of your memory. Because if you can slow down, if you can do this without the score, and you can slow down to actually that performance tempo or that practice tempo, which would be... and you can still play it from memory, you'll really have your memory locked in probably. And maybe your memory is really solid. And if you can't, you'll also discover ways you can work on memorization by doing that as well. So if you can't do it from memory, Rhodesy, go back to the score and work on it from there. Let's take the next section since you mentioned, I'll just take a quick read through. So let's just take that phrase for now. So again, I'm sight reading this. So, okay, this ascending arpeggio. So Rhodesy, look at what my hand's doing. right? One finger plays, the next finger, there's always immediate relaxation of the previous finger, and I'm not stretching to the next. This is just a pretty standard arpeggio. So there's a little bit of rotation to help carry the thumb. When the thumb plays, I am not already stretched. The stretch happens in one movement after we arrive, and it carries us to 5. Right? No stretch, carries us to 5. And then back down. Again, look, I'm not playing like this and then crossing, which is a bit of what we see when you play here. Yeah? Okay, that brings me actually to another point. Alexis, I agree with what you just said. One of the hard things to do is make every repetition sound new and fresh. That's true of every Chopin waltz. That is a really, really hard thing because we don't want to listen to a bunch of repeats of the same notes played the same way over and over again. Okay, so Brodsey. So in addition to this, we've been talking about technique and letting the hand relax. The other benefit that this is going to have for you is because you're worried about the stretch and the leaps. Let's say you're worried about the leaps and the stretch is happening because you're worried about the leaps and where you need to go. What's also the byproduct that we've been discussing, getting rid of that stretch, right? The other side of the stretch is that the fingers are very flat. And so when we end up playing these, you're kind of playing with this sort of movement, which is very difficult to control because it's only a very small movement triggered by the big knuckles. And there's no support from the rest of the hand or the wrist or up the arm. There's no support there. Whereas, if we take that same passage, and as I play up this, right, that relaxation and not allowing the stretch also allows the fingers to stay curved, more supported, more aligned, which is going to make it possible to phrase this because you want a crescendo. And we want to show that overarching shape. That's going to be possible. Again, same type of slow practice. We're just addressing it from a different perspective. Instead of thinking about the stretch of the hand, we're now saying, okay, when the hand isn't stretched, we can also maintain the natural shape. And with that natural shape of the hand, we're going to get a lot more control, a lot more power, a lot more ability to show phrase, all those good things. One more, you know what? I actually have a freeze frame here that is perfect to illustrate what we're talking about from your video. So I'm going to throw that on the screen. Okay. I didn't even pull this up on purpose, but it was just a random moment that I had rewound to after we listened to your performance. And look at the position of all fingers except the thumb in the right hand. You're in the middle of crossing over the thumb for an arpeggio of some kind. Not sure which measure you are in, but it doesn't matter. But look at the position of 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right? So the finger that's playing 3 is fully extended and there's no support from the bridge. But simultaneously, 2, 4, and 5 are also fully extended, which means your third finger is under an extreme amount of tension in the hand. That's almost the most tense position you could play from, having all the fingers outstretched like that. So let's see, you're crossing to an E flat. So if I show you a little bit of what that looks like, right? This is your hand position kind of in that freeze frame. We want to change that to this, where that finger we're moving to, the hand's curved, not stretched out, not with 4 and 5 hanging out in the air, and even 2, right? But relaxed. Good. This is going to apply. I want to find another frame from your video. to talk about the same thing, but it's in a different part of the piece. So let me pull that up if I can find just one. Yeah. Okay, here we go. This is from, I don't know if it's the very, very, very beginning of the B section. Right, we have all those repeats. And I mentioned right at the beginning, I'll show this again to everybody because we can both highlight the good and the bad about what you're doing here. First, in the freeze frame, you can easily see how the two fingers that you're playing with looks like 2 and 4, and they're fully extended out. Let's watch and listen to a little bit of this. So we're gonna watch for those same movements, right? How extended are your fingers especially in these groups of thirds? 3 and 5 and 4 and 2 and 1 and 3. So watching for all of those, and let's talk about that. How extended are they? But secondly, for everybody else that, in addition to watching that, Rhodesy, that's the most important thing for you. But for everybody else, the really good thing Rhodesy's doing in this section is using the wrist to bounce and to play all of these thirds. So if you want to see really, really healthy wrist technique, watch this and watch what's happening there. And Rhodesy, the rest, yeah, it looks like a starfish. The things you don't see until you pause a video. Okay, we're going to watch and listen to a little bit of this. And Rhodesy, keep an eye on how extended all those fingers are. Oh, that freeze frame shows another issue. We'll come back to that in a second. Okay, but Rhodesy, most important, when you came to a pause, you did a really good thing. It was after this. Da-dum, da-dum. I don't remember what fingers you were using there. Maybe 1 and 2 or 1 and 3, or maybe it was here. One of those dotted quarter notes. When you got to that spot and you paused, the hand went into that relaxed shape and we had more curve and it was all really good. We want to see that across the whole phrase. Right? So here, still curved and not flat. That's so hard to play that way. So let the hand relax. Here it's not about stretch. It's about the second thing we just left off on in the arpeggiated section, which is just let the hand relax and don't play as much on the pads of the fingers. Try playing a little more on the tips. Well, ETO, that's a big compliment to say Horowitz hands. You know what? I'll give you it, Rhodesy. Horowitz did play with very flat fingers a lot of the time. It's not the easiest position to release tension from. He was able to do it. All right. Let's go back to one more freeze frame here. So I'm going to leave this one up to you, Rhodesy. What is the other problem in the right hand that we can see in this frame? I'm not going to give you any other hints. We've talked about wrist, we talked about spread, we talked about curve. If Rhodesy doesn't get it, I'll open it up to everybody else. But first, Rhodesy, can you identify the really the next biggest issue that we see here? Just so you all know that the video is not frozen, I'm still here in the corner. Faye, going back to one of your comments, you said you feel people, including yourself, when the piece has a lot of accidentals, you end up playing more flat-fingered. I think, anytime we're moving to the black keys, Hey, this goes back to I thought this might come up. The question that we had earlier today about why we move in and out of the keyboard. So if you are stuck on the outside of the keyboard or toward the edge of the white keys, and we're playing a piece with more accidentals, we're playing something with more of the black keys. And yes, if you find yourself more flat-fingered, that's because you haven't changed the position, this lateral direction of your hand in relation to the notes you need to play. So, the heart of the key is, let's say it's like this area that my second and third finger are on. It's right there. It's between, it's not quite at the edge of the key, and it's not all the way where the white key hits the black key. It's in the middle. And that's where we strive to play everything that we possibly can. But guess what? Where's the heart of the black key? Where's the optimal place to play? There. That's a significant change in distance. I mean, it's at least an inch, maybe more, maybe close to 2 inches laterally into the keyboard. So if we're just playing like this, and we need to play D flat major, and we only move mostly laterally and say, oh, let's do that instead. Now thumb and 5, they're all the way on the edge of the key, and third is stuck out. Second finger's under a lot of tension too because we've lost the curve in 3. Whereas if we just go from C major to D flat and we allow the hand to move to the optimal position, we move really far in. From here to there. Continue up on black keys. How about white key? And now we're moving in and out. B major, it's a partial move in. C major, back out. Partial move in. Right? That we start to learn that and experience that more and more with practice and just awareness of what we need to be doing. Given time, I think it becomes something that you do instinctively, that you know the part of the key that you want to be playing in, and you know that there are of course places where you can't put the hand in the optimal position. And if we want to use those words, hard places in repertoire, those are going to be spots. No matter how fast they're moving, when the hand cannot be put in an optimal place, those are hard spots. They're going to take a lot of practice. Alexis, you say it's how the tips of the fingers are curved, pressing into the key with the first note. Oh, Alexis, I think you were commenting on Rhodesi's, the freeze frame, right? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if, I can't remember who that was that asked that question at the beginning of the stream about moving in and out of the keyboard, but that's part of the answer. We want to play in the most optimal part of the key, and depending on the chord and the fingers that we're using, we navigate in and out. Other times we don't. So it's context dependent. But in general, the problem that I see most people struggle with is that they don't move in ever, or they try not to move into the keyboard ever, and that causes the flat finger problem. And, Oscillus, thanks for still being here. The second problem is that sometimes when students move into the keyboard, they forget to come back out. And then we get stuck playing, D minor up here. And we're trying to move around and play. And we're stuck way up in between the black keys. Whatever that was I just made up, right? But no, we want to be playing, if it's just a white key pattern, stay further out of the keyboard. Okay? Let's go back. And Oscillus, I'm glad that you're still here, and I'm glad we got to at least cover that briefly. Rhodesy, I'm gonna throw your video back on the screen here, and your comment, when I asked you what's going on, that's not good, you say curved and flat. Curved which way, Rhodesy? And Alexis, your comment about this was, is it how the tips of the fingers are curved? Yes. And like pressing into the key with the first knuckle instead of the fingertip. Yeah. Alexis, you're spot on. And Expian, I'm sorry if I'm messing your name up. But fingertips up. Yeah, like the fingertips are a Bedlington groomer. These are all ways of saying the same thing. Yes, collapse of the finger. So I know many of you watch Dennis's channel. Dennis would call that collapsing of the nail joint. I just call it collapsing of the last joint of the finger, because I think of the nail as being further down the finger than that. But it's that collapse, right? And that is combined with, playing then kind of on like almost this part of the finger. I don't know if everybody can see that or if that's too far away, but it's like we're playing almost on the knuckle, the underside of it, instead of out here at the pad or the tip. And so if we turn that over, and I'm just going to pick, let's see, you're on G flat here. And if I kind of position my hand like that, like yours is, I can feel contact at that last joint, the last knuckle of the finger. You see it, man, it's even causing the rest of my hand to be under a crazy amount of tension. And that's turning white because of the pressure on it. And there's relatively little being put on the fingertip. Hopefully you can see, or you can zoom in if you pinch and do that on your phone. If you're watching on a phone, you can even zoom in on YouTube videos, I think. So what we want is not that, but it feels good to let that relax, right? So on the tip, where the finger is connected to the key, ETO, Dennis is Dennis Zhdanov. He's, I would say, maybe another great piano teacher on YouTube. Really dives deep into good technique and explains it really, really well. So that is the position we're looking for, Rhodesy, not that, right? And I'm playing mostly, not all the way on the tip of the finger, but between the pad of the finger and the tip of the finger. And all of these thirds, they can all be played from that sort of position, or sometimes they're going to need to be even more curved. For example, this one. This is the second one of this statement. Played with 4-2. If you can see this on the screen, because we're playing on a black key, and because of how we need to navigate the rest of the passage, which is a combination of black keys and white keys, I have to find a balance between where I play on the black key and where I play on the white key. Because I need freedom of movement here, but I still need to be able to reach the black keys. Right? And because of that, second finger is getting a little bit more curve than just playing extended like that. And now it's touching the G flat. So more curve combined with less and a little more extension in 4. But still, in both cases, 4 is playing with between the pad and the tip. 2 is playing with more of the tip. And yes, Lori and Kale, hey, good to see you. Lori got is thanks for putting his name in the chat. Yeah. Okay, Rhodesy. Be patient and take your time working through the piece. And as you want to develop more cohesion of phrase, your best friend is going to be slowing down the tempo and working that a note at a time with a great awareness of what happens physically between the notes. It's strange maybe that I'm going to say this, but it's kind of remarkable, the similarity between playing the arpeggios in this and playing Opus 10 number 1. They're not as big of arpeggios, but the technique that we need is still very similar. So it's not, let's say it's not as much of a challenge to play them as Opus 10 number 1 because we're not navigating at tenths or elevenths octave after octave after octave. Usually it's just an octave and then a leap maybe of some kind, but it's a leap to one note, not a leap in a continuation. But the technique that we employ needs to be the same as what you would use if you were going to play that etude really well. And that's, right? Always playing from this natural position. Yeah. The musical things that we need to work on, Rhodesy, I think are, I'd rather that you work on the technique here first, because if we work on the sense of phrase and the connection, I think you're still going to be battling through a technique that's making it harder to show the connection and the big shapes that we want. And so we're going to be fighting instead of kind of building the foundation first and then saying, oh, now I can create this bigger expression with it. So I'm going to leave us there, Rhodesy, today. It was an all-technical session. Take your time and work on those things. And slow the tempo down. Make it brilliant again. You said you worked on this 2 weeks. Give yourself another 2 weeks, way under tempo. And if you're really paying attention to all these things in 2 weeks, we'll start to increase your tempo back up again. And if you're anything like I was when I was especially a teenage student, I always wanted to just jump back into playing the faster tempo because it's more fun. It sounds more like the piece, but we don't need to. Sometimes in some of my videos, I stress the testing of faster tempi. That is not what you need to do in this case. You've already experienced the faster tempo, and we see a bunch of problems that we need to fix. Now we need to try to undo those all those muscle movements and repair them in the right way. And any time you take a faster tempo because you feel like it or you want to, you're going to be reinforcing pretty heavily the technique that we're trying to undo and that we're trying to sweep away. So I had refrained from doing any of those experiments, or if you can, even refrain from doing a run of the piece at tempo. Remember the story about Rachmaninoff practicing Chopin's Etude in thirds. It took him 20 minutes to play it through it once. And he didn't go back and repeat anything. It was one time through the whole Etude. And think about how slow that tempo was. Can you approach that? It's like what Vienna said earlier today about the tempo, like 0.1111 milliseconds per millennia or something. Extraordinarily slow. Yeah, Alexis, that's a great comment. You remember once you heard a teacher say, are you practicing or performing for yourself? Yeah, they're very different things. And sometimes we need to perform, and sometimes we need to test and experiment. And other times when we know the answers, we don't need to do those things because we have to take the time to reprogram what wasn't going well. Vienna, my favorite Rachmaninoff concerto is 2. I'm a sucker for those super romantic moments in the first and the third movement. Yeah. Speaking of things that I did stupidly as a teenager that I don't do anymore, I would play my favorite slow moments in the first movement and the third movement. I'd practice those, and I wouldn't really practice them. I'd just run them for minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes on end, and I'd get to my lesson, and I'd struggle through the opening of the concerto, and then I'd get to that E flat. And I would be like, so good. And my teacher called me out on it. He was like, you need to practice the rest of the piece. You're only playing the spots that you really, really like. You got to play the rest of it. So, yes, Alexis 4 is the forgotten child, and well, so is 1. Yeah. Oh, Antonio Richter, nice, very nice. Okay. Rhodesy, do you have any other questions? You say you'll be more patient with it. Start at half tempo, slower, gradually increase. Yes. Rhodesy, don't watch my last video about how your slow practice is wrong. That one does not apply to you. Everybody else here maybe needs to watch it, but Rhodesy, stick with slow and very slow. Okay. Let's give Rhodesy another round of applause, by the way. Nice work. And, great work. 1, learning all the notes. 2, memorizing it in just 2 weeks. And also, just to highlight that really good part about the technique, the wrist bouncing, that's really good. That even though we're experiencing some tension from the bridge down the fingers in the extension, it's great that that's not translating or transitioning up the arm and into the wrist, because a lot of people, if you have tension in the bottom part of the hand, the wrist also becomes locked. So great that the wrist is still free. Really, really good. And now we just want to work on keeping those fingers more relaxed. Yeah. Okay. It's time for some Bach. Vienna, congrats on sending in your first submission here. I think Vienna sent over an entire performance of, it's here somewhere. There it is. Bach's keyboard concerto in F minor. It's BWV 1056. I don't think we're going to listen to the entire thing. I think we're going to listen to the first movement, because the whole thing is like 11 or 12 minutes long. Yeah, no, it's great that you sent the whole thing, and it's easy for you to just send it. But we'll take a pause after the first movement and chat about that. Okay. So let me get that queued up. Vienna, don't be scared. You already played it. You performed it and you played it. By the way, since people are going to see this in a second, was this performance at a was it at a festival? Was it at a competition? Yeah. Can you give us a little background about what it is that you were performing? It was a competition. Was this part of the first round? Was it a part of the last round? Was it only one round? And how did you do? Why don't you type it in as Canadian Music Competition? Okay, finals. Great. You did not good. Oh. Okay. Well, we'll see how we can improve. But let's take a listen. Woohoo! Vienna, great work. So, like I said, that wasn't the whole concerto. You played for another 10 minutes for the next two movements. So, that was just the first movement. But gosh, wonderful work. Wonderful job. Whitney says she's jealous of your trills. Absolutely. Antonio said really great. Lots of applause. Yes. Frederick, bravissimo. Absolutely. I agree. Faze, your legato is pretty crazy. It was good. It was very good. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So Vienna, really, really, just lovely work. For those of you that, by the way, she wasn't turning pages. This was memorized. So the orchestra part was being played by a second pianist that was sitting behind her. So the collaborative pianist was turning pages, but Vienna was completely memorized. Oh my goodness. So Fred says lots and lots to praise, and I absolutely agree. Like, your sense of pulse was fantastic. It was consistent. The ensemble between you and the collaborative pianist was, I mean, it was either spot on or like the couple times that it was the tiniest little bit out, which is so audible when you have two pianos. It wouldn't have even sounded like you were off or out of ensemble if you were playing this with an orchestra. But I mean, it was almost, there were almost no ensemble issues at all. Which is great. Vienna, you pointed out a wrong note. Don't do that. No one else would have known. So don't apologize for the wrong note. And, I really hope that competitions don't judge too much on, as long as there aren't excessive errors. Just if you played well and if you moved people and if it was a meaningful performance, I know, and we could talk about this for ages, but like, goodness, that doesn't always happen in competitions where, the most musical artist doesn't always win. But really, like when people want to listen to music and they choose to listen to music, I don't think people want to hear a note perfect performance over something that is meaningful. So just keep that in mind. Yes, Alexis, I hear you. And John said you didn't hear any wrong notes. Absolutely. ETO, you said you'd be interested to hear what Vienna thinks didn't come out the way that you wanted. Second to last. Vienna, I am sorry about that. And I have a couple of things to say. I didn't hear any of the other competitors, obviously, but especially, is this a national competition, like countrywide in Canada, or is it region-wide? There can be competition at younger ages like this is incredibly stiff. And it's just as stiff as in the major, the Chopin competition that just happened, or the Clyburn. It's incredible, the amount of talent. And so, Vienna, I feel for you because I did competitions when I was your age, and I know what it's like to I felt like I did well in a couple of them, and I didn't. I did horribly. So we've all been there, and we'll just dust ourselves off, get up, and try it again next time. Good. Let's talk about a couple things, Vienna, that, especially if this piece stays in your repertoire and you're going to continue to compete with it, or play it more. Let's talk about a couple things that might help you elevate this to another level. Let's address technique first. We'll get that over with. There isn't a lot to say there, but there are a couple moments in your playing, especially runs and trills, even though your trills are very clean, some of them that are maybe like a bar long. There was a lot of tension in 5 and 4, and you could see them curling up and into the hand as you played those trills. So try to work on releasing some of that. Take your trills a little bit more slowly. See if you can add some rotation. Even if you're trilling with 2 and 3, add a little bit of rotation in there to keep the bridge from buckling and fingers 4 and 5 from curving up. Even though it didn't cause a problem in this piece, because of the Baroque articulation, like in this part. There's going to be that little bit of a pause right before your next phrase starts and your hand gets to reset. If you're going to play Mozart concerti, for example, and you've got to trill for bars and bars, we're going to need to get out of that trill and into a fast passage immediately. And so we want to try to work out that little bit of tension there. Lori, I have not. The only Bach concerto I've played is the Italian concerto, which is solo. Yeah, that's the only one that I've studied and performed. And I've played, now that I think about it, it hasn't been a concerto, but I've played harpsichord continuo on a few occasions, which is a really unique experience. It wasn't something I did very often, but yeah, a fun memory to think back about. Very, very different than playing piano or a typical concerto. Jess says, Vienna, you did an absolutely lovely job. And I agree. We all agree. Yeah. Okay. So that first thing is about those trills, Vienna, and the tension in 4 and 5. So as you work on those trills, see if you can release that in the hand a little bit more. Second, let's talk about ornaments. I don't think you did anything wrong with the ornaments. In fact, when I pulled up the score for this piece, the first thing that hit me was, my first thought, honestly, was, oh, Vienna, how do you get rid of the tension? Slow down. Keep 5 resting on the key surface, and 4. So don't take your trill any faster than you can keep 5 and 4 relaxed. And over time, that might start here. Continue practicing it a little bit every day. And you'll get faster and faster where 5 and 4 don't have that issue. That's different than, for example, if we were trilling with, like on a white key, for example, and doing this kind of movement. And you see like my 4th and 5th fingers are kind of hanging off the keyboard. That's different because it looks like they're curved, but they're not pulled up and in like that. Or when we get to trill between 2 fingers, like 1 and 3, it's more of a little bit more of a rotational shake. So yeah, Vienna, slow down the trill, and then also practice exaggerating this rotation. Go nice and slowly. You don't need to be in a hurry to get these better. They'll get better in your next piece, and they'll get better than that in the piece after that. But yeah, just like I said to Rhodesy, the slower you go and the more time you take, the faster these are going to improve. Okay, ornaments. The first thing, honestly, that I thought, and I'm going to take this back in a second, the first thing I thought was you played your ornaments incorrectly. Because the score I pulled up shows, this is a Barenreiter. We have a trill and a trill and a trill and a trill and a trill, and then like a lower mordant that I don't think you played, or I don't think anybody plays, and a trill. Okay, so Vienna, my question to you, this doesn't have any bearing on your performance. In Baroque trills, where does the trill, what part of the beat does the trill begin on, and what note does the trill begin on? What note in relation to the primary note that's written? That's a good question. Anybody else? You can jump in. Okay, Vienna, you say above Yes, the trill begins on the pitch above the primary note. And now in Baroque trills, at what point, according to the beat, at what point on the beat should the trill be executed? We've got two options, before or on. Anybody else you can chime in too. Vienna says on. That is correct. Okay. So, Baroque trills are starting with the pitch above the primary and on the beat. Not before, Whitney. But thanks for playing. Okay. So that would mean at the beginning of this piece we'd play, and the trill would start on G. Let's show the score while we do that. So actually G and D flat are played at the same time. So now I said I was immediately going to take this back because I was very surprised when I listened to other professional artists playing the piece that almost everybody started their trill on the primary note, which is what you also did, Vienna. So I believe what you did was F, G, F, E, which then parallels the triplet that Bach gives us in the next bar. In that, right, we end up starting on the same pitch. Can anybody, totally guess, but based on your knowledge of great interpreters of Baroque music, can anybody guess the one performance and who it was that played trills in this piece starting above the primary, or above the primary note? Yeah. Anybody have any guesses? In Vienna, while we're guessing those things, feel free to guess. My boy, Faze, who is that? With the G? I don't know who you're talking about. Oh, gosh, Glenn Gould. Oh, no. No, I actually didn't listen to him on purpose. Oh, I did not want to hear his take on this piece. Some other day. Vienna, you say no idea. Okay. Vienna, who have you listened to perform this piece? Alexis, you said, why didn't I listen on purpose? Glenn Gould usually has very, very unique interpretations that are, let's say, only he could get away with. Lori, you say Schiff, and that is spot on. Okay. Schiff was the only pianist, and I respect Schiff's Bach a ton. He was the only one that played his Baroque ornamentation in the way that we're all taught to. And I was kind of blown away. There were a lot of other big names that I listened to, and they all played trills starting on the primary note, as if they were romantic trills. But Schiff played... I really think... So, first part about the ornaments, Vienna, is that do a little bit of listening to other pianists and other Baroque specialists and see what they do with their ornaments, and also see where they leave them out. I don't know what score you were reading off of when you learned this piece, but I did something a little special for today, and let's see, here it is. A lot of Bach's music, and for a lot of his music, the original manuscripts are available. And so what we're looking at right now is the original manuscript for this piece, the beginning of the piece. I'm thankful we don't have to read off of this these days. But let's zoom in and let's see if what's marked here actually. So bar 1 is bum bum ba da dum. Bar 2, where everybody puts an ornament, is blank. There's no ornament listed. Well, maybe because that would be a traditional place to ornament originally. Maybe. Next bar where the triplet is. No ornament. Here is the next place where there would be an ornament that everybody puts one, and there is none written. Okay. Let's look for the first time an ornament appears. We have one. Let's see. Right. Second system. There's one there written for the violins. And then I think that's what that means. That little squiggle is supposed to be a trill for the pianist or a turn for the keyboard player. And then if we look further, it looks like we have in the violins and keyboard, and again, violins, keyboard. Okay, all that to say, we're going through this exercise because Vienna, great question. Why did they put ornaments in then? There are suggestions for where to ornament. But Vienna, as you do more and more listening of this piece, which I think you should do for a whole variety of reasons, and I'll sum those up at the end. But the more listening you do, the more you're going to see that not everybody ornaments 1 in the same way and 2 in the same places. And so you can start to make this piece more of your own. We don't get a lot of room to do that in Bach, but you can start to make it more of your own by where you choose to ornament things. So they don't have to be everywhere that your editor has suggested. And I think you have a great teacher that you're working with. And they could also help, as you work day by day and pick things out, they can help you decide where those could be. And this piece, you have the opportunity. I pulled that score off of IMSLP. It's available for free publicly. You could find the original manuscript of the piece. And you could do some of your own research and ask, where did Bach actually write trills? And you're going to find it's in like only half of the places that you ornamented. And other performers might play everything that is in your edition, and others might play almost none of them. Know that option is out there, and that we can use ornamentation in a more individual way. Okay. And, summing that up with how we started the conversation about Baroque trills. Unless your teacher really disagrees, I would advocate for starting trills, almost all of the trills that are marked in this piece, on the upper note because of, like the 2 bars we pointed out right at the beginning, because it differentiates the trill from the triplet figure in bar 3. That now it's not just, otherwise these are almost 3 of the exact same bars. There are slight changes, we get that G flat instead, and there's a different bass note, obviously. But if we don't do that, if we don't trill the same way, and we trill from the upper note, this has to be faster because it has to be a 4-note trill instead of a 3. That gives a very different feel because now we're accenting G in the dissonance. And the next bar, we accent the F instead. So we get to highlight different things. Okay, as long as your teacher agrees, Vienna. Any questions about that so far? And John, I'm going to highlight your comment there. You say Willard Palmer. Willard Palmer, I believe, is one of the editors of a lot of the Alfred editions. You say they wrote a very short but amazing book on the evolution of ornamentation from Baroque through the modern era. It's called Ornamentation, a Question and Answer Manual. Great. That sounds like a really, really interesting read, especially if you're into Baroque music. The preceding note on this edition is lower than the indicated trill. So, are you saying that the note in that book says to trill from the F? Because there are also moments in, like, for example, I know moments in Mozart where we break the trill rules to show a certain melodic movement. Anyway, John, if you have a highlight from the book on that particular answer, that would be very interesting. I can still say Schiff starts with the upper note. And I would think he's probably done more research on the topic than anybody alive. We're going to move on. John, I'll look for your answer in a second. Oh, Vienna, I wrote notes about your performance and I accidentally erased them all, but I think I can remember the last 2 points I wanted to bring up. Okay, John, you say that you interpret the marking in your book that it indicates to start on the F. Interesting. That would show why so many people begin on the F and not on the G. Still, gosh, if it were a different marking and not marked as a trill, if it were marked as a mordant, an upper mordant, right, then you'd start on the primary note and go up. Because what everybody plays is an upper mordant, not a trill. Because the trill would be... Vienna, it's part of the mystery of Bach's music. So there's endless research you can do. Let's move on. Vienna, your command of the notes is so great. And your sense of timing is so great that I think you are ready for maybe the most difficult challenge of playing Bach's music, which is how to insert or impart more sense of emotion and sense of phrase and sense of color. That's one of the harder things to do in Bach because often it can't be done with time like we do. It can't be done with time and rubato like we do in romantic music. And so let's highlight a few places. Let's start with the beginning, and then we'll highlight a few places where I think you could experiment a little bit more. First, your tone right at the beginning of your performance. When you aren't playing with orchestra for this piece, and you're only playing with another pianist, I think I would try to adopt a lighter and less aggressive tone. We might need or want to project more when we're playing with a larger ensemble. But one big thing that I learned in my competing with concerti, because until you reach the highest of the highest levels, you compete with another pianist. So when you play a concerti in a competition, you are the soloist and the second pianist plays the orchestra part. It's only the major competitions really where the finals are around with orchestra. It's so incredibly expensive to hire that. So most of the time when you compete with concerti, you need to be sensitive to the fact that the ensemble is different than what it might be with the full orchestra. So, for example, what I heard at the beginning of your performance was something like... It's got great projection, but it felt heavy. So could we lighten that a little bit? And in lightening that, we gain a little bit more variation in the color that we can play with as we're doing certain things. So playing our trills, and maybe we want to highlight that ornament. Or, for example, what I just got to in bar 4. Right? If we look at the score, and this happens all over the piece, look at the score, violin 1s have the same motif. Da-da-da-dum. And then the pianist repeats. Da-da-da-dum. Exactly the same in the same register. So we want to be out of the way and let the violins be heard there, and then take over and play that out more. And if we're not playing too forcefully from the beginning, right, where when we get to the 4th bar, instead of feeling that as our arrival, we need to back away and make room for the ensemble, and then highlight where we take over importance again. Okay. Yeah. So let's just take the dynamic back a little bit. And then when we kind of drop in or ever so slightly accent, I'm just going to write the symbol, but it's not really an accent we're playing with. When we lean into that to bring it out, we have room to do that without creating something very obnoxious sounding, just because we've lowered our overall sense of the dynamic. Okay. Great. Vienna, the edition that you're playing off of, did it have suggested articulations in it? Did it have slurs and staccato? Or were you playing off an urtext like this that didn't have any of that? Okay, great. There are more opportunities to do some different things with your interpretation of articulation. Let's see. Let's use here the bottom of this page as a possible example. Your 16th notes and your triplets do not always have to be all legato. What they have to do is they have to follow. You can't just spur of the moment change how you'd like to articulate a sequence or a pattern. So you have to set a pattern and follow it for subsequent phrases, but they don't always need to be. Is that G natural? So that would be all legato, for example. But you could play, and there's a slight bit of extra time and difference in articulation between the first 3 and the next 3. That would be totally okay to do. As long as you're not saying the first time, I'm going to play it one way, and the second time, and then a different way, and then the third, fourth time. You can't change that. But we do have opportunities to add some other variety. And that sort of variety, especially if you're competing against people playing Rock 3, etc., judges are going to be looking for more depth of interpretation in Bach. Because this piece is challenging, but it's not the technical challenge that Rachmaninoff gives. If you can even, it's just amazing that you have people that are in your age group that can have the handspan to play that stuff. But So when we're going to play something like this, or if you're going to compete with a Mozart concerto, again, for example, your depth of interpretation needs to be so great, greater than the Romantics. So look for all of these places that we can say, oh, like every measure is an opportunity, especially in measures like this where the orchestra is not playing. It's just, I can't sight read alto clef. E natural. So especially where the orchestra is really in the background, we have opportunities to let all kinds of different things about our playing shine. So how can we change some of those articulations? Hi, Brain Jr. I'll try to, I don't know if I'm going to have time to answer that question, to play long trills in the first of the little preludes. I don't think I'm going to have time to answer that today. I'm sorry. I did do a tiny segment on trills, like maybe 20 minutes ago, in the middle of this. We're talking about this Bach piece. So if you did want to hop back and take a listen to that, that would be the best thing. Let's keep going, Vienna. Okay, we're on the next page here. So again, looking for places where orchestra has rests or is less busy. So here they're just doing little highlights around what the keyboard is doing. So how can we take these little phrases? I'm just going to go a little bit more slowly so I can read this. So how can we show more inflection in there? So one of the things that I started doing is showing a slight break, where we choose to put almost like creating, not time, but a little miniature rest, was one of the primary ways that we could show more inflection in Baroque music, especially before keyboard instruments were capable of more dynamics like they are today. So there you can really hear that would be a new and interesting way to show something different, and it shows a real attention to your detail and saying it's not just, not saying that that's not beautiful, right? But yeah, how much more control? Think of it as a challenge. When you have opportunities, how much more control can you show over the instrument, over the piano? And we're showing that control not with crazy dynamics or super fast technique like in the Rachmaninoff, but with the control of little tiny nuance. That's a little nasty to sight read. Great. And now this is all getting kind of sequenced, and that we see that repeat of that motif. Triplet followed by eighth with a tie. Da-da-da-da. And then there'll be da-da-da-da somewhere else. And maybe the runs change in length, and some of them get longer. But continue to highlight that motif. Triplet followed by eighth note. As we go on to the next bit. Da, 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 da. So, another opportunity. The orchestra's got nothing for 3 bars. How are we going to do something that is more than only playing the right hand legato? The left hand detached. Right? Okay. Well, there are two great places you could look to highlight right in the first bar, 29 of this page. One is the third note of each triplet. There it is, right? You could bring that out. Or you could bring out the downward stepping. And then go back to legato playing. Yeah? So there are two options right there. Fred, oh, great. This is something maybe you just articulated that, what I'm thinking in such a succinct way. So thank you. Fred says, for Bach, you always try to think of the implied polyphony. Yeah. That's lovely. So we have two voices that exist within that triplet figure. So we can't bring out both equally. I don't think we can. We have to choose one. So Vienna, that's up to you. That's part of your interpretation. And one of those places where we do have an option to do something original with Bach. As we get into the next bar, it's more linear. The other thing that you can think of is bow direction for string players. And Vienna, do you have any friends that play a string instrument? So if you do, you could ask them to play some of this stuff, or to play, especially, how would they write in bowings for it? You play a string instrument. That's even better. Wonderful. How would you bow? And so you use that as an example. Play this line on, if you play whatever string instrument that you play. Put it in your register. Play that line. How would you bow it? And would the bow ever release from the string? Where would it change direction? It's a little hard because we might be crossing strings on a couple of these things, but if we think about the sound of that, and then think about the two places that we have big skips. Big is relative. The first one is large, the second one is medium. So what if we feel like in one of those two, we restart the bow? So here's restarting on the first circle. There's just a little breath. And it's just barely non-legato there. Or restart the bow on the second circle. Now there's a new impetus, and we're drawing attention away from the downbeat. So again, if we look for skips like that, where we can't do it every time because it'll make us seasick and it'll just be too much. But where can we change direction of the bow, and where can we show that it's almost like a breath? And how does that change emphasis of the phrase? Right? My favorite in this case is taking the second circle. I'm going to delete everything for right now. But if we go back and play that, all of a sudden, then we get this like new life into the phrase that leads us to, oh, it's like a deceptive cadence. Yeah. That's really cool. So that would be my choice if I was making the choice to show a little separation there. But that's just 3 bars. What are you going to do? Right? So how often, Vienna, that's a great question. How often should you do that across the piece? I think you have opportunities almost every phrase. Every few measures, there's an opportunity. Where is there not one? There is one. Is this spot coming up? Yeah. So that arpeggiated run, that's the end of the keyboard section, and the orchestra comes back in very strongly. That arpeggio itself is kind of our final flourish before we go back and we join the whole ensemble. So I wouldn't do something in there. But before that, let's see. No, I wouldn't do anything in there either, because we're leading to a cadence. Vienna, I think my best advice to you is to try to balance the sense of direction of line that you're feeling against how long have you been playing the same thing. And if we have the same type of movement, or if Bach's giving us the same thing without breaking it up himself in the composition of especially the rhythm, that's part of the reason that these bars, after our first three of this page, we don't need to do much, because the rhythm that Bach wrote already gives us those points, inflection points, or new expressive moments. Fred, you say this openness. Yeah, openness. I think you're meaning like of interpretation. Yeah, is part of why Bach is so hard. Yeah, Vikinger Olafsson says it's like a musical mirror, an invitation to the artist to create their own phrasing, articulation, and character. I agree. In fact, I actually really love his performance of this concerto. So Vienna, if you haven't heard Vikinger Olafsson's performance of this piece, take a listen to it. It's on YouTube. He is a master of changing articulations and bringing out really interesting little nuances. Yeah, so you say, Vienna, same with Mozart, right? Mozart wrote a lot more in his score. So Mozart gives us a blueprint of articulation that we have to follow extremely closely. Otherwise, it's not really Mozart anymore. But in Bach, there's nothing. We get the notes and the rhythms. And to relate to what Fred is saying, if I were to study this piece and go through it and figure out how I'd like to perform it, I would be taking an incredible amount of time analyzing motifs, harmonic motifs and musical motifs and rhythms and skips, and trying to understand what Bach did compositionally, and so it's like unraveling a mystery and using all of those findings to then say, oh, he took this idea and he's altering it over here in a certain way, but given that, I can interpret this second section in one way, or a second way, or a third way, or where that material comes back. How much do I want to show that it aligns? And do I want to... Everything in Bach is a question. And even if you listen to great artists perform Bach over the course of a career, their interpretations will change. Because what feels right and the answers we come to one day are not necessarily what we're going to come to in 5 years or 10 years from now. So Vienna, it's despite what we were saying about, Rock 3 being so hard, this goes back to our talk about what's hard versus not hard. This interpreting Bach is far more difficult than interpreting Rachmaninoff. So you have a difficult job as the performer. I have one more thing. So Vienna, all this talk about phrase and how we're choosing to show different nuance is something that you can start to uncover across the duration of this movement and the following movements. So I would just ask yourself, well, one, this is part of the reason we want to listen to other artists and other recordings. Where are they showing those inflections? Take a blank copy of your score, especially if you have a digital one, or just download a digital one, and mark up a clean copy of a score with another performer's articulation. Where are they putting little breaths? Where are they playing detached eighth notes? Where are they playing slurred eighth notes? That can start you down a path to discovering how many opportunities there are. And then you can try out some of those yourself as you work through the piece and say, oh, I really like that. Even in the phrase we just looked at, we were only focused on the right-hand part at the top of the page here. The right-hand part has the most going on. But you also have opportunities to not just play the whole left hand detached as if it's pizzicato. That is a good, solid baseline to work from. But now, where do we want to change that? Let's see. You know, I might want to slur da-dum into the downbeat, especially to highlight the difference. And if I'm going to choose to put space there, I might slur that left hand. It's one note, but one note creates all the difference. Or I guess two notes. It's one articulation. So I have one more thing, Vienna, to share with you about your performance, and then we're going to wrap up for today. Yeah, so Z-Spark, I've just talked about that. I think the best foundational approach in Bach is to detach the slower notes. They're not always eighth notes, but detach the slower pitches and legato the faster ones. That's going to put you down the right road, and it's often going to be a correct interpretation. But it is not the end of discovering what we can do with Bach. So there are always opportunities to break that rule. I don't think let's leave it there. Opportunities. Opportunities come once in a while. Vienna, the last thing that I want to bring up about your performance, and I hope you're this is all just to say you gave a really, really awesome performance, and we're just doing things to say, hey, maybe if you incorporate some of this, you'll maybe place next time, because it was already really, really extraordinary. So I want you to know that. Even though we're picking things apart, it was really a really, really wonderful performance. Last thing. Start to be mindful of how you're using your upper body as expression in your performance. I think we will do this. Vienna, I'm going to play some of the piece again from near the beginning. And I'd like you to tell me if you notice anything about how you're moving. Just tell me if you notice anything. Okay, so here we go. That's enough. And Vienna said, ooh, on the beat. So yes, every time that you are arriving on a downbeat, your whole upper body is showing us the impetus and the pulse, but it's showing us moving away from the keyboard. And that in itself isn't a problem. The issue is that it happens every bar, and it happens the same way. And so your body is showing us that you're feeling every bar in a similar way, but truly, every bar is a little different. And the other thing that you're showing us is that ideas are starting over on every bar. And those are not also. So even just the opening of the piece. Right? That is it's a 4-bar phrase. So first, I would just start to be aware of just what's happening, right? That's the first step. Do we know when we're feeling that pulse and we're showing it so outwardly? So, you've got a phone. Take your phone, record yourself, play the piece, play through the first page, and ask yourself, was I aware when I was playing that I was doing that? And that question can be so deep because we could be talking about our movement. We could be talking about what we're playing and what we're hearing, all those things. But let's reserve for right now just the idea that we're going to watch what we're doing. So are we aware? And then when we try it again, do we have the control over that movement that we can show and especially feel that phrases are longer and that we're not starting over on every beat? Yeah. I think if you can break a little bit of that habit, I think you might find it easier to feel these types of changes in articulation and in phrase and nuance that we were just talking about when they happen in the middle of a bar. Because right now, it seems like you're feeling the beginning of the bar every time. Well, that's great. And part of your sense of pulse and your sense of where that is so good. And that's part of what kept the ensemble together so well. So we don't want to lose that. But if we stop externally showing that so much, will that open up opportunities for you to feel more comfortable changing the phrase in the middle of measures? And I think the answer to that question is yes. Okay. Vienna, really great work. Can we just get another round of applause? And Vienna, do you have any questions for me before we wrap up for today? We did a very, very deep dive, but you really played very, very well. We would love to hear you play more on the channel. So please, and the next thing you're working on, if you're getting ready for a competition or a recital or something, send something in same way, and let's chat about it. Yes. Lots of love here. Vienna, keep up the good work. And don't let... you have school? Well, okay. Vienna, you can always send something in and you can watch the replay. We won't be able to have an exchange live, but yeah, you can always just catch it on the replay. Okay? Yeah, not today. Woo! Absolutely, Lori. My pleasure. Thanks, everybody, for being here. This was a really just filled session with all kinds of different yet similar material and approaches. I think it's interesting. We kind of started the stream today talking about gesture, and we ended talking about gesture with the body in two completely different pieces of music for two completely different people and for completely different reasons. But, it's interesting how some of those lines of thought can come back and be useful to us in so many different ways. Anyway, thanks everybody for being here. We're going to wrap up today. And, there we are. I thought I lost everybody for a second. But we do not have another stream this month because in 2 weeks in the US, we have Thanksgiving. So we will not have another stream this month. The next stream And we'll only have one in December. Will be December 10th. So it's just because of how the holidays fall. So December 10th, I will see all of you. And like always, if you have things that you'd like to send in a video. We can always talk, where the session can be questions. And yeah, absolutely. So it's great to see everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Practice smarter, not harder. And we'll see many of you hopefully next time in Vienna. Just stick around the channel. There's always new stuff coming up. All right. Take care, everybody. And I'll see you next month or in the comments. Bye-bye.